The movie recap begins in a vibrant barrio in Mexico, where a young Santiago is depicted enjoying a spirited kickabout in the streets. Despite his tender age, he showcases exceptional talent, leading one to wonder if his peers are simply terrible at football. This jovial scene is abruptly cut short when Santiago is awakened in the dead of night by his father, who urgently instructs him to pack his belongings. The family, he reveals, is about to attempt a perilous border crossing into America. A bewildered Santiago complies, and the family, alongside numerous other hopeful individuals, embarks on their journey to gain entry into the U.S. Upon reaching the border, an alarm has been raised, and in their desperate scramble to scale the fence, Santiago is forced to abandon his treasured football. Several years later, the narrative fast-forwards, seemingly presenting Santiago and his family as having struck the proverbial jackpot. He is seen leisurely relaxing by a pool, set against the backdrop of a colossal California mansion. However, this is quickly revealed to be a deceptive swerve. It turns out he and his father are merely the gardeners maintaining the aforementioned opulent residence. From this point, Santi, as he's conveniently dubbed to avoid repetition, begins playing for his local team. Lacking proper shin pads, he ingeniously improvises by fashioning some out of cardboard, which are humorously noted as certainly not FIFA approved. Consistently, Santi proves to be a standout player, scoring what is described as the most what non-football fans think a goal looks like goal in history. During another game, his exceptional quality is once again on full display. This time, his talent is witnessed by former scout Glenn Foy, who happens to be present watching his grandson's game, a notable coincidence. Glenn approaches Santi after the game, expressing that he sees something very special in him. Glenn promises to attend Santi's next game, accompanied by a sports agent he knows. The narrator humorously wonders where these scouts were during their own junior football days, though acknowledges the potential for a crime was reconstruction scenario if a strange man had approached them with such an offer. Santi shares this exciting news with his father, who however dismisses his aspirations, coming across as bitter as a field full of lemon trees. Crucially, before the game, Santi experiences an asthma attack, a detail the narrator explicitly states is really important. Despite this, Santi shines again. However, Glenn later informs him that the agent he mentioned did not show up, leaving Santi heartbroken. To remedy this, Glenn makes a phone call to Eric Dornhelm, the fictional manager of Newcastle United, and someone Glenn used to work for before Dornhelm fired him. Glenn requests a trial for Santi at the club, and Dornhelm agrees, on the condition that Glenn allows him to go back to sleep due to the time difference. Glenn then locates Santi and his family as they are leaving church, delivering the exciting news. If Santi can make it to England, Newcastle United will grant him a trial. Nevertheless, Santi's father remains resistant, essentially telling Santi to give up on his dreams, earning him the affectionate moniker the Big Meanie. Santi diligently works as hard as he can to amass the necessary funds for his flight to England, for his chance at stardom. Tragically, his father steals the money he has earned, using it to purchase his own truck, with the intention of starting a gardening business with Santi. As one can imagine, Santi is rather miffed at this theft of his cash, and consequently his dream of becoming a professional footballer. Through the power of editing, we are magically transported to England, specifically Newcastle, and even more precisely, St. James's Park. We witness the unveiling of new signing Gavin Harris. It's wryly noted that, even in a fictional world, Newcastle still can't break their own transfer a record. During the press conference, Gavin reveals an arrogant streak, confidently proclaiming that he'll single-handedly lead them to European qualification. Back in LA, Santi's grandmother, unlike his father, believes in him and provides him with the necessary tickets to get to England for his trial. Santi arrives in London and makes contact with Glenn, who offers him accommodation during his stay. After engaging with some locals and hilariously realizing that black pudding is nothing more than a giant scab, Santi is taken to meet Eric Dornhelm. Dornhelm, having completely forgotten about the conversation himself in clan hat. Nonetheless, instructs Glenn to bring Santi to the training ground to assess his abilities. The weather is described as terrible, which is surprisingly presented as rare for the northeast of England. Santi's initial performance is miserable, save for one moment of skill. He is specifically targeted by Barry Rankin, a veteran player whose best years are behind him. Santi's struggles are compounded by him slipping while taking a free kick, and he is subsequently told to hit the showers, metaphorically indicating he won't be returning. However, Glenn intervenes on Santi's behalf, claiming he was jet-lagged and, remarkably, had never seen mud before. The narrator humorously interjects, questioning this logic, noting that neither LA nor Mexico are exempt from rainfall. Despite this bizarre logic, it seems to work on Dornhelm, who agrees to extend Santi's trial by a month. Santi then pushes himself relentlessly to prove he deserves to be there. During this time, he catches a glimpse of the first team training, observing players like Alan Shearer, German Genus, and Lee Bowyer. Santi is sent for a medical examination, where he first encounters Nurse Rose Harmison. When asked if he has any conditions that would affect his breathing, he lies der and says no. This is explicitly highlighted as a crucial point, referencing the earlier mention of his asthma. One of Santi's new teammates invites him for a night out, where, to no one's surprise, Santi bumped into Roz and the two seem to hit it off. Back in training, Dornhelm recognizes Santi's individual talent, but identifies a flaw: his selfishness in not passing to teammates when he has the opportunity. After what is humorously described as a quick Luke and Yoda moment, Dornhelm teaches Santi a valuable lesson in teamwork and the critical importance of working together. This appears to have a profound effect on Santi, as Dornhelm observes him staying late after training to practice. This dedication convinces Dornhelm to give Santi a starting position in a reserve game against Manchester United. Santi calls his grandmother to share the good news, but his father remains resentful that Santi left them, being labeled a real killjoy. Before the reserve game, Barry Rankin, the dick from earlier, practices with his inhaler. This sight causes Santi to perform terribly in the game, leading to his substitution. His coach asks what's wrong, but after Santi refuses to tell him, the coach informs Santi that he has to let him go. Santi then goes to see Rose to confess that he lied on his medical about his asthma and that he intends to return to LA because he feels he's letting everyone down. However, not before he and Rose share a cheeky smooch. Meanwhile, Gavin, who had a thoroughly rigorous sleepover, is late for training. He leaves to discover that the wheels have been stolen off his car for plot reasons, and he needs to get a taxi. Conveniently, it's the same taxi that Santi is going to the airport in. Gavin encourages Santi to come with him to the training ground and explains what happened with Santi's asthma in the reserve game to Dornhelm. Dornhelm, once again, gives Santi another chance. Santi plays in the next reserve game against QPR, scores a goal, and wins over Barry Rankin, marking quite the productive day. He also scores in another reserve game against Middlesbrough, leading the narrator to wonder why Match of the Day doesn't film reserve games given the quality of goals they've been on display. After showing Rose his new living situation and new Highsmith, Santi is informed that he is in the first team squad for the upcoming game against Fulham and will start on the bench. A number of fans are seen watching the game in a bar, including, surprisingly, Brian Johnson. Santi's dad is back and walks into the bar where the game is playing and begins to watch. Santi is told that he and his Adidas product placement are coming on. Santi's dad sees him on TV and proudly declares to the bar that Santi is his son. Newcastle gets a free kick, and Gavin steps up to take it. After being asked, "Are you ready?" he shoots to thrill and wins the game for Newcastle. Despite exploding onto the scene like TNT, Dornhelm is still unhappy that Santi didn't pass to one of his teammates who had a free shot on goal. After the game, Santi and Gavin meet some famous faces who would rather be anywhere than in this film, but they love money, so why not? These include David Beckham, Raul, and Zinedine Zidane, who make a 2-minute cameo. Gavin suggests they go somewhere else, and the two make their way to a nightclub. There, Santi and Gavin are surrounded by several lovely girls and The paparazzi capture several compromising photos of the two, which end up on the front page of The Sun newspaper, with only Santi's face clearly visible. When Dornhelm confronts Santi and demands to know the identity of the other player, Santi refuses to tell him. Rose is also not too pleased either. This forces Santi to talk to Gavin about his life choices, but Gavin is unreceptive and kicks Santi out, which the narrator sarcastically deems a perfectly rational response. During a training session, Santi receives a phone call revealing that his father has died of a heart attack whilst at work. Despite having a contract to honor and the likelihood of the club granting compassionate leave, Santi decides to abandon his dream and fly back home, a decision driven by the drama of the plot. The narrator also raises valid questions about how Santi initially secured a work permit, given the strict criteria and the need for a tribunal to determine his exceptional quality, which seems highly unlikely given his numerous chances. Gavin tells Dornhelm that he was the one in the photo, and that Santi didn't even want to go to the club in the first place. Santi, experiencing personal growth, decides not to fly back to LA. He asserts that his father made him believe he needed an excuse for failure and took away his self-belief. The narrator finds this decision to not fly back for his dad's funeral pretty harsh, but acknowledges it's necessary to move the story along. The narrative then transitions to Santi practicing free kicks at St. James's Park at night. Several questions are posed, primarily how Santi gains access to the stadium at that hour and why the ground hasn't been borrowed him for wrecking his pitch during a vital period of the season, unless Santi uses his previous gardening experience to fix it. Santi's kicking technique is noted as super odd and awkward, possibly due to Kuno Becker not playing football extensively before the role. It's also pointed out that he takes these shots with his right foot, a detail the narrator emphasizes as important. Similar to earlier, Dornhelm finds Santi staying late after training and informs him that he'll be starting the next and final game of the season against Liverpool at St. James's. The big day finally arrives, and Santi's shirt is seen hanging in the dressing room next to John Carew, prompting a humorous aside about not making low-hanging fresh turns. The whole gang has come to see the game, with Glenn and Rose in the stands. Santi steps onto St. James's turf for the first time. In another severe case of the coincidences, Santi's grandmother and younger brother go to watch the game in the CM bar that his dad watched him playing unbeknownst to them. Newcastle takes a lead via the luscious locks of Big Gap. However, Liverpool quickly goes 2-up in a matter of minutes, with the goals attributed to Igor Biscan and Milan Barros, a choice that the narrator finds less feasible than if Gerrard had scored. In the second half, Santi embarks on one of his trade Martinez runs. He finally achieves the teamwork achievement as he passes to Gavin, who scores a big goal, bringing the sides level as the game enters the last minute. Newcastle earns a free kick, and Santi steps up to take it. Despite Santi being a right-footed player, he inexplicably takes this the most important kick of the season in his entire goddamn life with his left foot. The narrator suggests this could be because they used Lauren Rivera's goal for this sequence. In true Mighty Ducks fashion, he scores and Newcastle wins the game, eliciting a triumphant huzzah. Santi's grandmother exclaims that he is her grandson, and Brian confirms they met his father when he turned up at the same bar to watch the Fulham game. Once the final whistle blows, Glenn runs down to the pitch side despite it likely not being allowed, to tell Santi that his grandmother is on the phone. She reveals that his father saw him play the game against Fulham. Santi is overcome to find out that his dad finally saw him play. He responds to the news with a hearty music. Goal. The dream begins from 2005, honestly, will score no points for originality. However, the narrator believes there are shining lights. While the rags to riches underdog story has been done to absolute death and executed significantly better even in films of the same genre, Kuno Becker is credited with bringing a weird charm and likability to the role of Santiago, even if his performance is relatively meddling. Having a film about football in 2005 was a bit of a rarity, and it definitely holds up better than the likes of Green Street. The film also excels at creating a story that isn't solely about the world sport of football, but about the life of someone involved in it. Of course, it's a highly dramatized life for the sake of selling tickets. But the inclusion of that element is appreciated. All in all, it's described as an inoffensive, cliché-ridden, family-friendly romp that has a surprising amount of charm underneath its generic, overplayed plot. For the narrator, Goal, The Dream Begins lands solidly in mid-table mediocrity, neither pushing for Europe but a no danger of a relegation dogfight.